What's up, everybody? Ben Resi here for Stokastic. I am back. We are officially ready to kick off the PGA Tour season on this very channel. Yes, there's been a few events, and there was swing season, but honestly, football mode was activated. But when Waste Management calls, it's time to start putting out some videos, and that's what I'm going to be doing. We're going to go through the field. We're going to look at the course. We're going to have some fun, most importantly. Find some DFS plays for us to put on the board today. I want to welcome you to the channel, All Things DFS. Picks, tools, breakdowns. If you have not used what we've got going on here at Stokastic, I'm going to tell you all about that. Like I said, we're going to have some fun and hopefully find some insight and some angles to make some money this week. Dive into it, friends. Again, like button appreciated. Here we go. I'm going to get right into it. Let's not waste any time. We're going to make this quick and informative. So, waste management. Let's start there. We know the People's Open. It gets rowdy. I'm sure a lot of you watching, you've probably been there, right in Scottsdale, having some fun, getting crazy. Stadium hole, all of that good stuff. That's the optics, the antics. It's not really quantifiable. Here's what we know. We've seen this course a million times. One of the most famous on tour. It's the same every year. We've got some Bermuda. We've got a par 71. We've got some good risk reward holes. One of my favorite things on any course is a gettable par 4 that you can get into trouble with. Certainly that would check the box here. I love the breakdown. You need a little bit of everything. Usually, typically, it's not a windy course, anything like that. The conditions, scoring is gettable. Greens are fast, firm. You got to know what you're doing. So there's really nothing crazy. I don't think it's a gimmicky course. When I look at past winners, the common theme usually pretty damn good players, and we do see something that I think is interesting with course history. There are a lot of Decky had a run here. Scheffler. But you do see a lot of the same guys play well. It's not everyone. I mean, certainly we've seen some guys really struggle here and then out of nowhere get it together. So I don't want to say it's a one size fits all, but you do see a lot of guys that really, really strong conditions. We are also back to traditional stuff in terms of this like 130 guys, give or take, top 65 in ties are getting through. It's not one of these, elevated events or any of that stuff. So we're setting the table with all pretty generic things. In terms of skill set, again, I think obviously if you want to tell me my guy's a pure ball striker, sign me up. That travels anywhere. Not crazy long irons, but that 150 to 200 range, you're going to have a decent amount of shots there. And then you do need some crafty short game. Getting out of some of these situations, being able to get up and down, being able to roll it. It's an all-around game at this point. I don't think it's a course that you have to be one way. You don't have to be aggressive off the tee, but you certainly can. When you look at this, you can really be pulling driver on a lot of these holes, and we see that there is an elevated driving distance on this course. If you dial it in with your irons and get some makeable birdie putts, that is the name of the game. But let's dive into the board, and we're just going to start looking right at the top. Okay, Scotty Scheffler. Yes, he is projected quite high. He's going to be quite popular. It's hard to deny any of these things. He had his injury. He came back. He looked just fine. Tied for 9th at Pebble. He won this in 2022. He won this in 2023. He was 3rd last year. He does everything good. He's the best player in the world. We know all of this stuff. It's just going to be that's a decision point on its own. Do you want to build Scheffler lineups? Do you want to build non-Scheffler lineups? Obviously, if you go non-Scheffler lineups, you have a much wider scope of what you can do. But with this type of field, there's still plenty of ways to go with Scheffler. So the answer to me, of course, lies somewhere in the middle. We will see how things mature in terms of ownership and things as we get closer to lock. But I don't really need to spend a lot of time on Scotty Scheffler. Of course, he's firmly in play. He's going to be the most popular player on the slate. Do you double dip? So you've got 4 north of 10. You could. That is going to funnel you and probably kill the 9 and possibly even the 8K range. You could do like a 2-4, Scheffler, JT, and then like 4-7K guys, something like that. I don't think that's crazy. I'm going to take Scheffler out of the equation for a second. Between the next 3, I like Justin Thomas. All 3 of them, of course, again, firmly in play. JT, Decky, Burns, they all play here all the time. Most of them have success here in some iteration. Burns, the last couple years, has been right there. JT has, numerous top 10s, and then Decky's got crazy course history. Going back a little ways, he's regressed a little bit. We've also seen these guys in recent weeks. Certainly, Decky got his year started on the right foot at Century. JT was right there at Amex. Burns just been kind of chilling, but we know he can really roll it on Bermuda. So again, I'm not breaking any news here. When you talk about the top of the board, it's just kind of dealer's choice at that point. I prefer Justin Thomas. Scrolling down a little, we crack into the nines. You certainly could start here. You could omit the top four on lineups. I will have lineups that start with Sanjay. I bet him last week. I'm probably going to bet him again. Again, shop that number, and we'll talk about that. He was good at Farmers, came in fourth, and we know his game translates. Obviously, he can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he's had a mixed bag here. But again, I don't worry about Sunday just because I know what type of player he is. He's just someone that really, when the irons cooperate, the rest of the game is very healthy. And he's been putting. He certainly can putt on Bermuda. That's his preferred surface. We've seen the success in Florida, things like that. I have no worries about Sanjay. I do worry, a couple times in 2025, his irons have straight abandoned him. If we get that, we're going to be in trouble. But you could say that about any player. I'm not super concerned about that. Straka's been fantastic. Tom Kim, Bobby Mack, Benny on at 91. Okay. I mean, that's my guy. Him and Rasmus are just sitting there. I am very interested to see how that ownership kind of ends up falling. Right now, we don't have them projected for much, and I think that's probably where it goes. But again, some of this can and will change. So I just want to give people a heads up. I'm filming this pretty early on Wednesday, so there's plenty of time until tee off. But we have seen these guys, and Rasmus did look good. Where did he finish last week? Yeah, he kind of fell back a little bit actually. T22nd, I wasn't paying attention on that final round, but him and Benny On are there. I do think that On is another guy that he's interesting in the sense we know what he can do and we know where he struggles. Obviously, the putter has been a liability for quite a while. He shows some form here and there, but the thing that's very interesting about Benyon that I always like, he's not someone that typically when you're a bad putter, you're also a bad chipper around the green player. He's actually phenomenal around the green player. It's truly just the putting. And we've seen him at this course. He's finding the weekend, and it's not a hard cut to make relative, but he's got a pair of top tens over his career here. And it's just, can that putter really cooperate at some point? We're going to need that on Bermuda. I don't think it's the worst surface for him. I think his price is probably pretty fair when you consider the ownership that you're going to be getting. So if you want kind of a lower 9K guy, I'm going to go to Benyon. Rasmus would probably be right behind him. Let me just sort, by the way, make sure. Oh, I've got the salaries in the right spot here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, Bobby Mack, Kitayama, Maverick. You can immediately see, and again, I know I keep saying this, but I just think it's important. The ownership is going to update, but a lot of these guys are not going to be popular. This is going to be somewhat of a dead range. Bhatia does look like he could get some ownership, and I agree with that. I think he makes a lot of sense. He's another guy that I think you could bet if you wanted to. He's got the talent. Game's a little all over the place. His putter is fantastic. He's been putting. He gained 3.5 strokes at Pebble. He gained at Century. We haven't seen a ton of reps from him in 2025, but even dating back to last year, the putter was an asset. The irons, the short game, there's some work there, but this is another guy with a lot of talent. And even though he's kind of the lightning rod for ownership in the eights, I'm okay with that. If you wanted a quote unquote pivot, when you look at the rest of the eights, to me, you've got Clanton, who, of course, the amateur is just doing serious work. I'm never going to push back on that. But let's take a look at Greiserman. He's someone that, again, he's clearly playing pretty solid golf. His prices come up to reflect that, but he was 7th at Amex. He had a pair of top fives in swing season, and even at Farmers, he was able to find the weekend. The putter has been fantastic for months now. So he's got the off the tee putting combo. It's not like the Cam Champ where I always relate it to Cam Champ because that's what he does, but he does have some of that in the sense that he is putting the ball where he needs to, and then he's converting it right there. That takes tremendous strain off your irons. Now, at American Express, he gained almost 7 strokes on the approach. If he's doing that, I think we know what we're going to get. But even if he doesn't, even if his irons are just average, I think this is a pretty fair price point. It's 8,600 for him. Another guy that's, he's in kind of a dead range. I'm not super enthralled with Spieth. I think Wyndham Clark is fine. Bhatia would be the other guy. And then the last guy on the screen, friends. What are we doing about Cam Young? You tell me in the comments what we're doing because I'll be honest, I don't know. I bet him a couple times this year, and it's an expensive addiction. The irons are out of control bad, and I think with that in mind, he's more on the outside looking in. May I get a share or two when I run the sims? Possibly, and I don't think I'll manually boost that. But man, I was really looking for more coming off what I thought was a pretty good start to the year at Century. He has just been really, really struggling. And then the putter went away. I think Cam Young is on the outside looking in. It's going to take more than that for me. Let's round out the eights, and then we'll talk about some other things that we've got going on as well. You've got Siwoo and JT Poston. These are going to be staples of, I think you're going to see a lot of lineups that go Scheffler and then a couple guys in this range, and I totally get it. These are solid players. They make cuts. They certainly have some upside. We've seen it with Siwoo plenty of times, and even JT. The thing that's interesting about him, his putter has really abandoned him so far in 2025. He is 0 for 4 on strokes gained putting in his events. That's pretty atypical. This is a guy that usually can roll it. Bermuda's not a bad surface. So if you think there's going to be a bounce back there, that could be something worth exploring with a guy like that. So that's again a pretty good range. And from him right to Spawn and Minwoo, you're going to see some ownership in here. Obviously, the leverage is going to be somewhat suppressed because of the ownership. Not going to sneak these guys by anyone, but at the same time, I get it. So to recap the eights for me, because I do, golf's tough to sometimes talk about because you can just say, well, yeah, if this guy putts, if this guy hits his irons, yeah, well, we all know that. Not great. Bhatia, Greiserman, Clanton, Siwoo, I think would be kind of my priorities in this range, with the rest of them being more if they just pop up in some of my GPP lineups. So we're going to crack into the sevens in just a second. But I'm on the data hub right now. I think this is really important to talk about. If you have not seen this, maybe you've used it for football or basketball or baseball, or maybe you've never used it at all. It's all part of what we've got going on here. The single lineup simulator, contest generator, pre-contest sim, late swap, post-contest sim, which is so important to analyze your lineups. All of this stuff is powered by the sims and powered by our tools. And they are really, really cutting edge. Honestly, they have taken my game to the next level. They have made so many people a lot of money out there. Is it a cheat code? No, let's be serious. That's not how it works. But what I can say is they can help you make better lineups. And if you're doing that, you've done your part. You still need to get lucky. You still need to connect the dots. We all need to do that no matter what you're using. But these tools can help you uncover leaks by post contest sim and putting in lineups that have the proper leverage for the tournament that you're in. And if you want to check them out to celebrate what we got going on, because it's the Super Bowl and because it's just the Waste Management, which is one of, I think, the best tournaments of the year, 50% off your first payment of any PGA product. So you can go for the full sims, you can go for single line, you can go for whatever you want. The link is below. Find the package that works for you. We have different levels. We want to make sure all different types of players are taken care of because, again, there is something out there for everyone to take your DFS game to the next level. No doubt about it. Link is below. All right, let's start rapid firing some of these 7K guys. Again, there's going to be a lot here. Hey, good old Ricky. He's certainly had his history at this course. Billy Ho, someone that, again, during the Florida swing with Bermuda, we see quite a bit. Eckroat, Sam Stevens, the Glove, Lucas Glover. These are the ranges. Again, I think some of this is driven just specifically by Scotty Scheffler. When you click in his name, if you go say like him, now I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I'll go him and Sanjay. You are left with $7,050 per player, and that funnels you to these type of players. And that's why you're going to see a lot of lineups with that type of correlation, with a couple of these guys paired around one or two big names, Scheffler included. Killa Keith Mitchell. I want to look at him for just a second. We know he can score. We know he's got the off the tee game, certainly. Irons, not bad. He's gained in 3 of 4. One of that's dating back to RSM, which was in November. But we saw him at Pebble. We saw him at Amex. Ball striking was good. Putter wasn't horrendous by any stretch. It just wasn't an asset either. I think this is an interesting play. His Phoenix Open results, mixed bag, not great. but at the same time, he's really never done anything mind blowing with the irons or the putter. And if you don't do either of those things, there's really no situation where you're going to be able to really tap into that top 10 equity that we're looking for. So I think Mitchell's a decent pivot off some of these other guys if you don't want to get to Glover or Eckroat or some of the players that I think are going to be a little more popular in the same range. As we look down, you do see Daniel Berger with some positive leverage right now. That's due to the low ownership. Again, if that ownership holds, he's going to be a guy that if you can get right, you definitely can have a payoff for. And, Berger worked back from injury. He had some results. He was runner up at RSM. He looked okay at Amex. He missed the cut at the Farmers. He's very hit and miss. I do think he's in play. It's been tough with Berger to really get any consistency. It's not the upside. He's got a handful of top 10 since the return. It's just he's got a lot of missed cuts. And honestly, that's almost reflective of his waste management altogether. He's got some top 10s, but he's got some missed cuts. Let's scroll down, see what else we can find, and then we'll get out of here. If you have any questions about any of this, by the way, at JazzRazBets on Twitter, get in our Discord. When you sign up for any of these packages, Discord is included. So many great resources in there. And you get, of course, the ownership, the projections. These things are going to update closer to lock. And you get just the latest information to make your decisions, which is all we really can ask for in this wild, wild DFS sport. All right. Where are we going here? Charlie Hoffman. This is a tournament flyer for me. Ball striking has been fantastic. If he can putt at all, just putt a little bit, that's a guy worth considering. Lee Hodges, I think he'll be one of the higher owned guys down here, but I get it. Scrolling down, the other Hogard, Nikolai, certainly grades out with positive leverage, and that's something I always like to take notice of, just because these are the guys that might give you some paths in tournaments. And he's someone that has shown he's competed at the highest level. He's competed in strong fields. Flat 7, not a lot of ownership. That is interesting. We kick it into the 6K range now with Bez. I love you, Bez. Your short game is great. Your ball striking is so bad right now that it makes you difficult to click. I would rather take Bud Cauley. Bud Cauley is a player that a lot of the same things can plague him, but when he gets it going, he's another one that he's got all the skills to compete. He also worked back from some health issues here and there, but he's actually playing some pretty good golf. And I looked at him and I ran a couple different numbers and he kept popping up for me. He's been consistent with his last handful of tournaments. We haven't seen him a ton in 2025, but if you give me a little putting, the off the tee game is very, very solid. I don't worry about that whatsoever. There's a lot to like there with Bud Cauley, and we're talking last man in territory. You're not going to see ownership here for any of these guys. This is like sub 5% across the board. Dealer's choice. Echidariva is here, EVR. This is where I think skill set stacks are really important. Like you could go Rico Huey and go one direction if you want to be aggressive. CT Pan, totally different type of player who he's shown throughout his career. He's got putting and ball striking combos, and that occasionally they do sync up, and he potentially could win big time events. The floor is the floor. 6,700, not going to be owned. Schmid, another crazy wild man. And now we start getting down to players that, again, this is a good field. So Adam Svensson's a guy I play all the time. I think he's got a lot of talent. My biggest question is, do we need to? If you play Scheffler, more than likely the answer is going to be probably, particularly if you double up there. But if you go very balanced, if you start with like a Sanjay, you can land in the 7s and not really need to do anything down here if you don't want to. There are definitely plays in the bottom ranges. There's no doubt about it. I think for me, though, there's not a lot to separate them. And you look at the projections, very, very tight across the board. I mean, you're talking upper 40s, lower 50s for all these guys. You look at the ownership, very, very tight across the board. I don't see a lot there. And then there's the last page. I'll just give these guys their due, but I don't anticipate getting to these type of players. If a couple land in my lineup, so be it. But to me, the cutoff is kind of in that CT Pan range. Svensson, I guess, could be, I should say Adam Svensson. Maybe the drop dead point for me. You've got Carson Young right there, Sam Ryder right there. These are players that I'm a little more comfortable with then the next page. And for me, the only way I go sub 65 is if I double up with like a JT Scheffler combo. And it's not my favorite build at all this week. I don't anticipate having a lot of that. So again, broad strokes here on the PGA Strategy Show, but we did run through a lot of golfers. And for me, when I think about how I'm going to build, there's two distinct paths. One is Scheffler plus the mid range. The path that I like the best, I think, is going to be probably JT Sunjay. And then when you go that route, just kind of for an exercise, let's say we've got JT and we've got Sunjay, 74 and change for your next. You're not boxed out of the nines. If you wanted to go to like a Benyon, you're going to have to dip into the sixes for sure if you do that. If you don't, you can attack kind of that Siwoo range and be just fine. Siwoo, and then you could go to the Burger range for a handful of guys, round out your lineups like that. There's a lot to play with there. And again, that's why I love these tools. What I'll do, I'll run my sims, take some of those lineups for single entry and whatnot, probably put them in the single lineup simulator and mess around with some 2v2s, some 3v3s, and see if I can increase that ROI. That's why they're there. Powerful, powerful stuff. There's no better sport to mess around with than PGA DFS, my favorite of all of them. On that note, friends, it's exciting to be back. Again, we're gonna add some layers to the show, but I just wanted to get out here, talk about some of the golfers, showcase the data hub, and let you know what we've got going on here at Stokastic. Final thing for me, make sure if you bet sports, if you bet golf, or if you just bet in general, if you haven't seen what we're doing at OddsShopper, it's really, really, truly powerful stuff. And it may not directly relate to this, but it does in this sense. When you're playing PGA DFS, I know for me, I'm trying to turn $20 into 10,000, $100 into 50,000. Most likely not going to happen. But the goal is to just continuously do that. And eventually you connect the dots, you give yourself more opportunities. But how do we do that? How do we sustain the bankroll? Well, one way for me has been using OddsShopper to do that. This is much more steady than the variance you have with GPPs. And the tools that we've discovered for betting, they give you insight into the values that allow you to mass enter, similar to what you do in the DFS world for a lot of you. Why bet one bet when you can bet 100 bets that are all plus EV? This is really, really cool stuff. If you've not checked this out at all, honestly, come on in. The link is below. We're running this. You get 7 free days, and then you lock yourself in for a full month for 75% off. It's less than $1 a day with that code SB75. It really is game-changing stuff on the betting side, and it can help not just betting, but for me, DFS, to have a little more runway when I'm trying to hit those lottos. So just want to make sure you guys were aware of that. Just really good times all across the board here. Let's make it even better times with the waste management this week. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate all of you. Any questions? Always happy to help on Twitter. Give me a follow. And until next week, good luck. Enjoy. Let's win some money.